Welcome everyone. Hope you are staying warm today to our presentation of expanding your care team, building a multi-layered support team for dementia care. And we will get into it. So first, just want to welcome everyone that's here to our presentation. So my name is Haverty Brown, and I'm the social worker at NYU Langone's Center for Cognitive Neurology, also which houses the Barlow Center for Memory Evaluation and Treatment, which some of you may be associated with in some way. And just want to welcome everyone here, whether you found this through the flyer or word of mouth or an email. Very glad that you all are joining us. And I will be giving the first part of the presentation on the expanding your care team, kind of the framework for what we will learn today. And then I'll pass it over to Sandea for the second part of the presentation, but I'll let her introduce herself briefly now.
Hello, my name's Sandea Greenstark. I work at the NYU Langone Family Support Program for Alzheimer's disease and related dementias. I am a clinical social worker, and I'm excited to share with you today a bit about our program and how our program provides support to caregivers and general support around what is out there besides our program. How our program sort of touches upon these different needs that a lot of caregivers find they have.
Awesome.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Sandea. Glad you're joining us today, and very glad to be here. And I just want to take a moment to welcome everyone and also acknowledging that we probably have a lot of different perspectives of people joining us. Maybe you are someone who is noticing cognitive changes or symptoms in yourself. Maybe you've been recently diagnosed with a dementia or mild cognitive impairment. Maybe you are a care partner, caregiver, someone supporting someone, perhaps a professional working in the field. So just want to welcome everyone and hope that there will be something of benefit for everyone. So I invite you, as we're getting started, to just introduce yourself and where you are coming from in the chat. Hello from Manhattan, hello from Brooklyn, wherever you are joining us. So we have a sense of who is in this virtual room with us today. So if you're able to do that in the chat, please do. So it's always nice to know where people are Zooming from, and very glad you're joining us. Okay. So a few goals of today's presentation are the following. So we are hoping to help you identify support services for dementia care using a holistic model of care. So the goal is to expand your care team and also think about the care team that you currently have. So with that, I hope that you will be able to also just reflect on and understand the importance of building a multi-layered support team for dementia care. So why is it so important to have a many-legged stool of care for dementia? And then also, hopefully, you can personally reflect on how you can expand your care team, whether you are a person living with dementia or a care partner or a caregiver, or just someone who is seeking just ways to understand how to access support. Here we go. I forgot that last one. So I ask for a little bit more participation from the audience in this slide. So we know that dementia requires already quite a few professionals to help support your healthcare, the healthcare of your loved one. So, when you think of a dementia care team, what professionals come to mind? So, who do you think of that you think should be a part of someone's care team with dementia? So, feel free to put some thoughts in the chat. So you might be thinking of a neurologist, absolutely. Someone who can help diagnose and understand what might be the form of dementia or cause of cognitive changes, a geriatrician, a primary care provider, a psychiatrist, maybe a speech therapist, physical therapist, occupational therapists, all of these rehabilitation therapists who do very important work in helping you kind of achieve your fullest potential. A nurse, someone wrote in the chat, absolutely. Family, very important. Maybe a home health aide to support you in your home or wherever you live. And maybe a social worker like the two of us and many other social workers that we will refer to out there. Yes, so I see you all listing these many professionals who may be a part of your care team already. And I really appreciate that people wrote family and family members because we know there are many care partners, family members, friends, neighbors who are a part of the care team. So just acknowledging that there is already a lot of professionals to think about just in the healthcare system and then outside of the healthcare system as well. So part of the goal of today's presentation is to reflect on ways that you can connect with more support, whether that's people to help you navigate all of these many professionals that you might be working with, or just some new ideas for what kind of support might be helpful to you. Okay. So part of the goal of this presentation is this expansion. So expanding our idea of what a care team could look like. And we wanted to bring in the social work perspective to care. So social workers think in sort of this holistic sense about someone's well-being. And we use this sort of wordy word, mashup of words, a biopsychosocial and sometimes spiritual, which I add on here, approach to care or a lens to see how to support someone. And we know that dementia, like all disease, touches on all aspects of your being or the being of your loved one. And then, of course, if you're a caregiver, for you as well. So, just want to name and kind of give some examples of how to use this approach, use this lens to think about your care team. So we know that the biological part of your care of supporting someone with dementia is so important, as it's a syndrome, a set of symptoms that stems from complex processes in our body's biological systems, and hence the need for your neurologist, primary care provider, and all of the other professionals who are addressing the biological systems in the body. We also know that, of course, dementia, the primary symptoms of it are changing the way that you think, maybe how you feel, how you're perceiving yourself and others. And then also, if you are supporting someone with dementia, you're also shifting in that, how you think, how you feel, how you perceive someone else or yourself or your relationship as well. So the social part is so important to address as well, is when dementia is affecting someone, it affects all relationships, the roles, the dynamics in both our personal and our professional relationships. And then also the spiritual side of our being as well. So, a diagnosis of dementia or cognitive impairment can bring up these bigger questions around our meaning and our purpose. It can bring up feelings of grief and loss, questions around dependence and independence, and also then the big ultimate questions around life and death and your own personal experience of that. So accessing spiritual support too is something that I think is important to address when we think about expanding your care team. So this is kind of the framework for the presentation and just some food for thought and reflection on what a care team can look like. And to give us kind of another sense of how to think about care, I want to share a short video from this researcher, Dr. Robert Waldinger, who is at Harvard and has taken on this 85-year-long study. He has not been a part of it for 85 years, but it has existed for 85 years, studying what are the causes of people's distress and stress, but also their well-being and their happiness. And this finding really stood out to me. And I think he mentions this not in the clip we'll play, but in this video, that he was surprised by it too, that there's quite a, in some ways, simple correlation to our well-being, and it is the number of hours per week that we feel emotionally and or spiritually supported. So that means something different for everyone, what that looks like, but to be able to boil it down to just the number of hours per week. So just something to reflect on, and we'll hear him in the video reflect on this concept, this idea of never worry alone.
One of the things we know about life is that we all have worries. We all have concerns that come along, worries about children, worries about health, worries about finances. And one of the best teachings I got in my training as a psychiatrist was from one of my mentors who said, "Never worry alone." And this teacher meant that about being worried about a patient who I was treating. But what I've come to understand, that it's really good advice for just about everything in life, that if I'm really worried about something and I share it with somebody I trust, it makes all the difference in how much better I feel and how much less alone I feel with my worry. There are so many different things we get from relationships, and so each of us can check in with ourselves about what we have and what we would like a little more of.
Okay, so I really liked that framing of the presentation. Oops, pulling up my slides again. Pardon me. Okay, there we go. The idea of never worry alone when we are experiencing something challenging, to find some version of support, whether that's personal in your personal life or professionally, or just connecting to something bigger, how to get the support you need. And that invitation he gave at the end for each of us to check in with ourselves is, where do we need a little more support? Where can we bolster ourselves or help support our loved ones a little bit more? So I'm going to click through these again since we already connected on that, and get into now the 4 expansions to your care team that I will talk about today before handing it over to Sandea to talk about their program, the Family Support Program. And I see a question in the chat, will slides be shared? We won't share the slides, but we will share a whole list of resources that we'll talk about in the presentation. So there'll be an email at the end that you can email Abena, our program coordinator at NYU's Cognitive Neurology Center, and she will send out the list of resources, everything that we've touched on today. So that will be there for you. So just keep that in mind as I'm going through these different expansions to your care team that you can write notes down or you can look them up, but if you can get everything in writing by reaching out to Abena at the end of this. So I would like to just kind of frame this as lots of resources. Listen for what you feel like might be helpful for you, and just where do you need a little extra support, or what is some new information. So for some of you, you might already have some of these connections, but for some it might be new information. So one expansion is to get that social and emotional support, to feel a little less alone in what you're experiencing, is to connect with a dementia support organization. So I always encourage everyone that I work with as a social worker at the Barlow Center to connect with some additional support. So we all, as human beings, have a need to feel seen, to feel heard and understood. And we know that people with dementia and cognitive changes and their care partners often feel the opposite of that. They feel unseen and unheard and misunderstood. And sometimes by people closest to them too, who can't quite relate to what they're going through. So support organizations I think are really important to provide ongoing support or just as needed support when you feel more isolated. So you might be familiar with some of these. So one is the Alzheimer's Association, which is a national organization. So they have a 24/7 helpline that you can call at any time to get support or resources or advice. There's social workers and other trained clinicians who staff that helpline. And then Alzheimer's Association also has a local New York City chapter in Manhattan, and they do education programs and also lots of events in the community. And also have some support groups as well for both people with dementia and care partners and caregivers. So another similar kind of support organization that is based in New York City is called Caring Kind, and they have lots of different programs for people living with dementia, newly diagnosed, for example. They have cognitive stimulation therapy groups. They have lots of different caregiver support programs and groups, as well as lots of great education programs. So they're another great organization to get connected to. And it's also worth saying that Alzheimer's Association and Caring Kind support people with all kinds of dementia, not just Alzheimer's. So if it's Lewy body or frontotemporal disease, these places are also for you. But I'll also get into the other more specific support organizations for other types of dementia, as it can feel, like I said above, just really important to feel understood by people who are experiencing something similar to you, as the symptoms of these different diseases can be very different. There's lots of overlap, but they also can be quite distinct. So very important to tap into the support that actually feels supportive. So that's kind of a theme to come back to. You might join a group and give it some time, let it kind of sink in, go a couple times at least to test it out. But, be open to seeking support that feels supportive. And sometimes finding an organization that is more specific can be very helpful for that. Another great organization that is national, so it'll be mostly all virtual online, is the National Council for Dementia Minds. And they are an organization that is focused entirely on supporting people living with dementia. So they have different support groups for people with dementia, different education programs, lots of panels featuring people's personal experiences that I have found very helpful to attend as a professional as well, just to hear about people's experiences living with dementia. And they have also ways to get involved with advocacy and how to sort of help promote more awareness of dementia and all the different challenges, and also how to live well with dementia. That is one of their mottos. Another few organizations that you might be aware of are, once again, more specific for younger onset Alzheimer's and other dementias is Lorenzo's House. They are based out of Chicago, but they are a national organization and provides support specifically for people whose loved one was diagnosed under age 65, so younger onset. And then they also have a particular focus on supporting children and young adults that might be more affected by young onset dementias. And then, of course, we have our NYU Langone Family Support Program. So stay tuned for more on that program and how they support both care partners and people with cognitive changes and dementia. Okay, so like I said, if you'd like all of this in writing, we will send it out to you at the end of this presentation. So the support organizations can provide great support on both the social front and the emotional, psychological. And then we also know with dementia, as we listed all those professionals at the beginning, the care team is big and there are many needs. And a very helpful expansion to the care team can be connecting with a care manager or care navigator. And just sort of like the names sound, they help you both navigate the healthcare system and also social services. They can help you stay organized with the many logistics of care, with appointments, understanding next steps, and just providing some ongoing support. And there are a few ways to access a care manager or navigator with health insurance now. So one of them is the guide model for dementia care, which is through Medicare, original Medicare A and B, or really Part B. But if you have original Medicare, then you are in a diagnosis of dementia, then you would be eligible for guide, and they would be assigned a care navigator who would stick with you and your family, with your loved ones, and help you manage and navigate the healthcare system, provide resources, and there's some other benefits to the program as well, but one of the main benefits is having a care navigator. Another program that's in New York particularly that also accepts Medicare is called HERA. They're a group of care managers, social workers who provide care management for people with chronic conditions, with dementia being one of them. And they are able to provide ongoing logistical support as well. And you can be eligible for HERA with a diagnosis of mild cognitive impairment, whereas for GUIDE, you need to have a diagnosis of at least mild dementia, which is another stage after mild cognitive impairment. In New York State, if you have Medicaid, there are organizations called health homes that you would be able to access, where you can have a care manager or care navigator, and we'll, like I said, send out information on different ways you can look at health homes. So if you have Medicaid or know someone or are in the process of becoming eligible, know that there is additional support for if you have Medicaid and a chronic condition to get care navigation services. Additionally, there are private paying out of pocket options, care managers. So this kind of group of professionals used to be called geriatric care managers, and I think some of them still use that term, but the sort of the professional organization has moved to this term aging life care managers. So if you see geriatric care manager or aging life care manager, it's the same group of professionals, and they are usually often social workers or nurses who are specifically trained and certified in how to navigate the healthcare system and help you understand your next steps and your needs. And then if you don't fall into any of these categories, I think it's always worthwhile to call your insurance company and ask if they have any care navigation or management benefits for chronic conditions, because it's possible that they do and that you don't know about. So just encourage to reach out and kind of know that this sort of professional is out there, and there are different ways to access care management or care navigation services. So, in addition to healthcare and all the different professionals on the care team, we know that with dementia care, there is a lot of stressors around both financial and long-term care planning and getting appropriate legal support to do that. So, another very valuable member of your care team might be an elder law attorney. And they focus on how to plan for long-term care with all of the unknowns, assessing risks, and providing options for care. And this is really their wheelhouse, is understanding long-term care, including Medicaid eligibility, and how to go through that process. So knowing that there are professionals that are dedicated to long-term care planning and Medicaid planning, I think is really important. So knowing that an elder law attorney is that professional, and many of them also do estate planning as well, but looking for elder law attorney in particular to help with the care planning and potentially Medicaid planning aspects of your care. Also, another person who could be helpful for you is a benefits counselor at social service agencies, or maybe a social worker at your local older adult center in New York City, your senior center. They usually always have social workers a few days a week who can help you understand if you might be eligible for benefits. But there are other organizations that help support anyone in New York State. So Live On New York is one that I recommend to a lot of people. They have benefits counselors who can help you understand if you might be eligible for support services. Or if you need to look into disability, if you are no longer able to work, how to access disability benefits. Sydney, CIDNY, Center for Independence of the Disabled, is a great organization that can help you access benefits and just provide more information on what might be needed for next steps. So, and these are free services that are available to get information and also see if you are able to access benefits that you might not know about. And then another organization that I'd just like to name, whether you have Medicaid or are considering Medicaid eligibility for long-term care for your loved one or for yourself, is that there is a dedicated organization in New York State specifically for long-term care through Medicaid called ICAN, ICAN. And they also have dedicated counselors who can help support you through the process of enrolling in managed care plans through Medicaid, and also help with advocacy if you are trying to advocate for more hours of care. So they're a great organization to call, to get in touch with, to look at the information on their website. So just knowing that these different support organizations are out there, I think is really important to know that, okay, when I might not need them right now, but at some point, perhaps I will, and just to get more information. Okay, so there are all of these logistical, financial, legal, healthcare, aspects of care. And then, of course, there is the emotional, part of care that is often needed when navigating dementia, and spiritual care as well. So just important to name that, anxiety, worry, depression, sadness, anger, withdrawal. These are all common responses to loss and change. And it's important to get support for all of these common responses and feelings. So expanding your care team to support your emotional and spiritual health, we can sometimes put that on a lower priority list when we have all these other to-dos and other needs. But just wanting to name and encourage everyone that there are many ways to do this. They're not the only ways listed here. But to reflect on is, do I need some more support in these departments, in the emotional care and the spiritual care department? So one potential option for supporting your emotional well-being is a therapist, a psychotherapist. They're trained to support your mental and emotional well-being, help you adjust to change, and learn supportive coping skills. So there are many ways to access psychotherapy, and often it can be covered by insurance. So you can use search engines like on Psychology Today and filter by your insurance or by common experiences that you're having, and looking for someone with experience with supporting people with dementia or maybe illness or disease or loss. So all of those sorts of things you can search for in a variety of ways. And then also important to name that we can all get to a level of crisis where we're not able to support ourselves and we feel totally overwhelmed and unsure what to do. And we may have people we can turn to in those moments, but also important to just state, and just so you know, I don't know if everyone knows this, but that we now have this national service, the 988 Lifeline. And it is run through the different states. So New York State has their own organization where they run it here, but you can call anytime or text the 988 number to receive free confidential support. So just another one of those resources to stick in your mind, as we none of us know when we might need it. So just important to know that that is also available to you. And yeah, like I said, making space just to think about and reflect on these bigger questions around meaning, purpose, life, and death, and who or what supports you, and who could you add to your care team if we were sort of making a long list of all the people who might be supporting you. You might also add your pets. You might also add the park. You might add your place of religious practice or worship. You might add a phone call with a friend, right? So, what gives us this sense of connection? What gives us this ability to connect to something bigger than us is, of course, very personal, and creating some time for that and some space for that. So even just right now, thinking about, what can you sort of add on to bolster your emotional and spiritual support as part of the care team, in addition to all of the other many legs of the stool. So, just want to take a breath, take a moment to acknowledge that was a lot of information, and a lot of resources, and these 4 expansions are touching on many different things, actually way more than 4. I just put 4 slides together. So just pausing for a minute before we hear from Sandea about this particular program that we have at NYU. And where you personally feel that you could use some more support, or did you hear about a program that might be you might be interested in connecting with, whether right now or in the future, whether that's a dementia support organization, getting part of a group, which Sandea will talk about a little bit more. Maybe finding someone who can support more in the care management or care navigation, get more information on the guide model, for example, or kind of getting that push to say, yep, we really do need to look at how to get the financial and legal support and start thinking about that. It can be a hard step to take, but an important one. And then also the emotional, spiritual support. What are the ways that you get a little bit more support so you're not worrying alone? So just taking that all in and knowing that you can get all of the resources that I listed on the slides emailed to you, so you have time to go through them and think and reflect on what might be helpful to add in. Okay, so now I'm gonna pass it over to Sandea for the next part of this, where we get more into this particular program at NYU.
Thank you, Haverty. That was great. So much good information. So again, I'm Sandea Greenstark. I work at the NYU Alzheimer's and Related Dementias Family Support Program. We often just call it the Family Support Program for short, because it is quite a long name. And I'm a clinical social worker. I provide one-on-one consults with caregivers, and we do serve caregivers. Our program is funded through a grant through New York State to provide support to caregivers of people with dementia. And that means family caregivers. We work with also friends, but not paid caregivers, just to clarify. We do not offer support to paid caregivers, not that they don't need it, because it's hard work. So we can go to the next slide, and I'll just get started telling you a bit about this program. So our mission is to enhance the quality of life and well-being of family caregivers and the people with dementia for whom they care. Support services include care consultation with social workers like myself, support groups for caregivers, caregiver respite through programs for persons with early stage dementia, and I'll tell you a little bit more about what that looks like and what that means, and programs for caregivers and those with memory loss to enjoy together, which we call joint enrichment. I also want to sort of look at the lens of why we offer these services, why we think they're important, not just what we offer, but the meaning behind these things. Why joint enrichment? Why respite? So I will explain a little bit why we frame it in these ways and offer these services. Okay, we can go to the next slide. So the first thing I'm talking about is the buddy program. And the buddy program falls under our umbrella of respite. Respite care is any kind of care for the person with dementia that gives the caregiver time to themselves, a break, maybe even if it's just for an hour or 2 hours. Respite care could be having a home health aide. Respite care could be having the person go to a day program, anything that gives the caregiver some time to take care of themselves, or maybe even do the things that they need to do, like go to the grocery store or take care of bills. At our program, we have a few things that fall under the umbrella of respite, but the buddy program is one of them. And it is a program that offers intergenerational connection. So a person with early stage Alzheimer's or any related dementia, it doesn't have to be Alzheimer's. Here it says Alzheimer's, but I just want to clarify, as Haverty touched on, there are a lot of different types of dementia, and it doesn't just have to be Alzheimer's for someone to qualify. But it is important that they're in the early stage of dementia. So the person is matched with a college student at NYU, and the college student is doing something called service learning, which is a actual class that they take through NYU undergrad program. And then they learn about dementia in their class, but then they also are paired with someone who has dementia and they meet monthly for meaningful companionship and connection. And the person who runs this program really does an excellent job at finding good matches. So really pairing the student and the person with dementia um, around common interests. Maybe they're both interested in photography or cooking or whatever it may be, music, so that they have something to connect around and something to connect on. And then really developing a relationship. But it gives the caregiver time where the person with dementia is occupied and has another person in their life for stimulation and engagement. It can also be sort of a gateway to introducing home care. Sometimes people are not ready for home care. They feel overwhelmed by the idea of that. So this can be sort of like a little taste. What's it like to have someone else come into the home and spend time with the person who has dementia? So really respite, again, talking about how do we as the caregiver or the person with dementia get outside stimulation, support from other people. And oftentimes that does mean engaging a companion or, in this situation, our buddy program. And we can go to the next slide, Haverty, thanks. The other thing that we will touch on that's respite in a later slide is our program, A Place for Us. But we're switching now to joint enrichment. And joint enrichment is a program that is really about creating meaningful engagement for the person who has dementia and their family members or caregivers. And sometimes paid caregivers will participate in these programs as well. But it's oftentimes, as you can see in this photo, they're here on a museum tour. And the tour guides are trained to provide stimulating and engaging discussion around art for people who have dementia, but also for the person who does not have dementia. And this is just one example of what joint enrichment might look like. Sometimes it's a concert. We've had the Orpheus Chamber music group come in and play and talk about their instruments and why they chose their instruments and what music means to them. And Alvin Ailey has spoken. So really to provide opportunity for stimulation, engagement, but also just doing something enjoyable together. Oftentimes when people have dementia, they feel isolated, or even the caregiver feels isolated as well. They feel isolated as a pair or a dyad sometimes. And this is a way to kind of engage, be out in the community. We offer a lot of this online now too, since the pandemic. But even there, it's a group participation kind of activity. And so that there's more than just the relationship of caregiver and care receiver. You have something that you can talk about, something stimulating, something meaningful to engage in together, like maybe you once did. You know, people miss, they say, oh, we used to always go to the theater, or we'd go to museums, or we'd go to the movies, or we'd watch TV together even. And this, you know, you have someone who's a facilitator who can really sort of engage both participants, the caregiver and the care receiver, in something that feels stimulating and interesting. There are a lot of other programs in the city as well. I'd like to note, not just ours, Intrepid Museum, MoMA, Carolyn Halpern is here. She does Arts and Minds, which is another great program. So just so you can know that NYU offers this, but there are so many wonderful arts and cultural programs out there for people with dementia and their caregivers to participate in. Okay, what's next here? Recreational activities and support groups. So we have another program called A Place for Us, which is a recreational activity run by a wonderful recreational therapist. Here's the slide for A Place for Us. And that is for the person who has early stage dementia. And they can engage in this in person or online. During the pandemic, we had to move a lot of our in-person activities online just for the protection and safety of our participants. And we actually found that that actually really worked pretty well for a lot of people because they're often, it's hard for them to get out. They're homebound or it's challenging. So we were really pleasantly surprised to see how well these programs did work. over Zoom. And a place for us is a way for the person with dementia to be engaged with other people. And again, it falls under respite for the caregiver, because if the person with dementia is able to be engaged, the caregiver might be able to be doing something else in the house or the apartment, while the person with dementia has something stimulating to engage in. And as you can see in this photo, this is not a passive experience. The person who runs the program is really good at engaging everybody and getting them involved in the program. They're not just sitting back and watching like you would watch TV. They're doing art projects. They're talking about important things in their lives that are meaningful and what comes up for them from the past. So it's really about connecting with one another around an activity. The other slide we had before mentioned groups. That's another thing that we offer at NYU, which is support groups for caregivers. We have a support group for spouses. We have support groups for children caring for adults, or adult children caring for people with dementia. And we have a caring from afar group, which is for people who might be providing care from another state or, at a distance from the person who has dementia, which brings its own challenges. And these support groups are really about connecting with other people who understand what you're going through. Again, a lot of times people feel so isolated in this world, and they feel like people don't understand what it's like to be caring for somebody or to have somebody in their life who has dementia. It is such a unique experience. And I think being in a support group really provides that sense of understanding, like you are not alone, and sharing ideas, sharing comfort, sharing sadness, grief, loss, all the things that come with this disease is so important to find. That support amongst other caregivers can be so meaningful. And there are other support groups as well. NYU offers them, but as Haverty mentioned, Caring Kind offers support groups. Alzheimer's Association offers support groups. There are support groups in every state and every area, city, town of the country. Even if you don't have a local support group in your town, you can get on Alzheimer's Association, which is national, and you can call in, you can do support groups on the phone, you can do them online. There are a lot of ways to get involved in a support group. I think finding one that is the right fit for you is really important as well. So sometimes someone tries a support group, it feels like not quite the right fit, and they try a different one and it's just right. So, if you try it and it doesn't feel like the right thing for you, don't give up. You might want to just try a different one. So we can go to the next slide. We talked about that. Oh, and I guess that's the end of my slides. So I think I covered all the bases of our program. One thing that wasn't on the slide is education. We do offer educational webinars throughout the year. Those are really, pretty much what it sounds like. It's an opportunity to learn about different aspects of caregiving and skills. We have education around communicating with people who have dementia. We have education around providing meaningful activity and recreation at home, really coaching caregivers on what are some things you could do at home with the person who has dementia that might be engaging or interesting. And again, foster connection between the caregiver and the care receiver, because sometimes, as Haverty touched on earlier, that relationship really changes. And so what is this relationship now? And how do we navigate it, and how do we foster it and develop it in a way that feels meaningful in this sort of new iteration? You often hear people talk about the new normal in this world. And so that's what our program is really here to help you kind of navigate that. What is the new normal for you, and how can we support you in that? I think I forgot one more thing, which is the individual care consults, which is my wheelhouse. As a social worker in the program, we provide these one-on-one consults where I, for example, would talk with a caregiver and really think about everything that Haverty is talking about today. Where are the holes? What's missing? Where can we fill in those gaps? And everything isn't going to apply to every person. So really the individual care consult with the social worker is about, okay, who are you? What's your specific situation and your family? Because every family is different. And how can we get in there and really support you in your specific situation with your specific parameters and concerns and help you figure out the best way to navigate this world and this disease? So I think that really is the last thing I needed to add in. Thank you so much, Haverty. And thank you all for being here.
Thank you, Sandea, for the overview of our family support program at NYU. And like I said, I'll be able to send all this information out. But Sandea, do you want to briefly mention how to connect to the family support program or who it's
Sure.
able to be
Yeah.
involved in it?
The best way to connect with the family support program is to reach out to we have a main phone number, and if you call that number, you can speak to one of our community health reps. They will do a brief intake with you, and then if you are interested in being assigned to a social worker, they will assign you to a social worker like myself. I'm one of 4 social workers on staff. And then the social worker can help you navigate all the other programs we have. If you don't want to speak to a social worker, you can also say, I'm really just interested in the buddy program or a support group or, these various other things we offer. So to do that, you would call 646-754-2277. I will also put that in the chat for people to write down. But that is the best way to engage with our program and get enrolled.
Wonderful. Thank you. And thank you all for joining us today. So this is our wrap up, our last slide, and I just invite you to think about if you heard anything that made you a little bit interested or maybe gave some sort of feeling of like, huh, maybe I could use that, or pushing you in a certain direction to add to your support team, or feeling like you need more support. So ways to access that support are also to connect with any of those organizations listed too. So the Alzheimer's Association, Caring Kind, these dementia support organizations, in addition to family support, also can help you determine your next steps. If you are a patient at the Barlow Center, you can ask your doctor, nurse practitioner to refer to me, the social worker here. I'm happy to support you if you are a patient at the Barlow Center. But there are lots of resources for those who are not um, within NYU or within our system. So if you would like all of those resources, please email the email on the screen to Abena, and she is our program coordinator at the Center for Cognitive Neurology. So she handles all of, you might have gotten some emails from her about this presentation. So she will be able to communicate with you the resource list that I've put together from the presentation that has everything we touched on. And then the other request that we have before you leave is to fill out a short survey that we will link into the chat right now. And that is to give us a little bit of feedback on the presentation, and also to put in any ideas for things that you would like to see more of, or learn more about related to dementia or caregiving, or anything that comes to mind that we might be able to help you with. So looks like there is the live link in the chat now. So please go ahead and click that. Let us know if you can't access it. And we have a few minutes if anyone has a particular question. please feel free to reach out. But thank you everyone for being here, and we will keep this open so you can do the survey and let us know if you have questions. We will be here until noon. So thank you all, and I hope you can find some benefit from this presentation.
Thank you.